Success. Okay, fine. I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. First of all, thank you very much for letting me present to the meeting. I have, as Jamie mentioned, I think I scared Jamie earlier. I hadn't logged on because I thought the meeting started at 7:30, and she probably thought I would forgot about the meeting, but here I am. Anyway, um, so I've given many presentations. What do I usually do? I pick a topic, I find out what the science is, and then I present on that. This one is different. This one is largely my thoughts on this topic, the nature of time. So, but having heard that, I hope you stay and continue to listen. There's other scientists that I'll be quoting in here too. Okay, so it all started in the, well, let's forget that. So what is time? 1600 years ago, St. Augustine said, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to them, I do not." Most of us have trouble with it. Clearly, these ladies here, they're dancing, they understand it completely. You can tell they're time experts. But it's really not an easy question to explain what time is. The angel is telling the other angel, "Don't ask Einstein, where does the time go?" Because it'll be a very long answer. Okay, I'll try not to take too much time here. But I started earlier, this began in the 1980s. That's a long time ago. And when I asked myself, gee, I wonder if time travel is possible. I mean, I know how to read. I went to school. I should be able to figure this out. And after just thinking about it for a very short period of time, I came to the conclusion I have no chance of knowing if time travel is possible until I really understand the nature of time. So I started to try to learn. And this is just a small amount of the books and magazine articles and DVDs and television programs, and I don't know what else is in here, that I just started. And I've read all of these and more to trying to understand time as much as possible. And so many of the people who write this thing say, "Oh, you want to know the nature of time? Read my book." And I read it, and they really don't nail it. Okay, they bob around a little bit here and there, but they really wasn't taking it. But I was trying my best to learn as much about it as I can. This guy on the right, that's me trying to figure out what time is. Okay. Um, Time seems so familiar to us. We understand what is early and late, what is past, present, and future. We know what then and now means. We completely understand a minute, a month, a year. We know that time can stand still or it can slip away. You can save time or lose it. You can spend time or waste it, and it heals all wounds. We know so many things about time, right? As it says there, it's with us from our first spank to our last heartbeat. But what is it exactly? Why does it pass? What does it mean to measure it? And why does it exist? Does it exist? If it does not exist, how can we be so familiar with it? Okay. Now, in all respect to my second grade, my sophomore high school English teacher, Ms. Vish, she said, if you're going to give an oral presentation, which is what she called it back then, she said, first you give all your substantiating facts, and then at the end you give them your conclusion. Well, with all due respect to Ms. Vish, and she was so sweet, I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to tell you my conclusion first, and then I'm going to give you the information that backs it up. Okay, so fasten your seatbelt. All right. Whoops. So, what is it exactly? According to me, Bill Spizzirri, the shorter answer is what is time is that time does not exist, but events do occur. Okay, that's the short answer. The slightly longer answer is we only perceive the passage of time if events occur. And events are any changes in matter and energy, anything. If there are no events occurring, there is no time. And events themselves really don't need time. The events are real and time is an illusion, according to Bill Spizzirri. Time does not exist independently in nature. There is nothing that's flowing, which we often think of time as flowing, but I will insist there is no thing in nature that's flowing. Someone once said, I think he was just trying to be funny, time is just one damn thing after another. It's a funny line, right? But come to think of it, from what I'm saying, I think he nailed it. All right. That's really what it is. One thing after another. We see matter changes, that is events, changes in matter all around us, even inside our bodies, constantly. Because of that, we perceive time. Do not confuse our perception of time with the actual existence of it. Two different things. Events can be a subatomic particle interactions, planetary motion, the flap of a butterfly wing, one lunar orbit around the Earth, the motion of a glacier, the tick of a clock mechanism. These are all examples of how events create time, or time creating events. The question, what time is it, can alternatively be stated as what events have occurred. Okay. So I know this is wacky. All right. Take it easy. Your watch still works. Okay. Maybe this will help explain it. Try to imagine a very large area of space that is completely empty with absolutely no matter of any kind in it. You see the picture on the right, the closest I could get to some empty space. There could be no time in that space. There could never be any change in that space ever. It would be totally static. And without matter, there could not be any events occurring in that space. Time would literally have no meaning in that space. There would be no way to perceive or, quote, measure, unquote, time in that space. I don't know if that helps any, but it just something I wanted to mention to try to assist. Let me click this thing here. So this is a time-related joke. It's nothing to do with what I'm saying. I just thought it was funny. What time is it in Italy? Probably half pasta something. Okay, very funny. So I think you would agree that you and I can't go throughout the day without knowing what time it is. It controls our day. We are all closet chronoholics. We need to know the time. Okay. So when you ask, what hour is it? It can be answered with a number like 6. When divided by 24, that expresses a percentage of the Earth's rotation that has occurred since our location was opposite the sun, that is midnight. All right. Example, 6 divided by 24 is 25% of one Earth rotation. That means 6 a.m. That's the easy way to say it, right? Okay. But in other words, it's events, the rotation of the Earth. That 25% of the Earth's rotation is an event. And so that event determines what hour it is. It kind of determines our time. The question, what hour is it, and the answer deal exclusively with the counts and orders of events. So when you ask what hour is it, you don't do a calculation in your head about the Earth's rotation. Okay, you automatically know that if somebody says 6, you know the answer. When the answer is 7, your train leaves to go to work, and when the answer is 8, your work starts. In other words, all that matters, what hour is it, is what events have occurred and what events will occur soon and in what order. Experience just tells us these answers. You don't have to do the calculation. Experience has taught us the details of the sequence of events that we perceive as time. There is nothing that we perceive as time that is flowing. It's just events. Okay. I said, okay, but you don't have to answer. You don't have to agree. Okay. And I'm hitting my button to go to the next screen, and it's not working. This is so fantastic. And it's not working. Good gosh almighty. Why is that? Oh, here we go. Let's see. Okay, right. This time it worked. So what about the beginning or the end of time to help us understand this time that doesn't exist? What happened before the beginning of time? Well, the short answer is nothing, because time started when the first events occurred. And currently, cosmology tells us that's the Big Bang. And people will often talk about the Big Bang and say it was the beginning of time. And I think it's beginning of time because that's when the events started. And then when will time end? Well, you probably figured out the time will end when events stop occurring, when the universe stops changing. Now that's kind of wacky, kind of hard to imagine unless all space is empty or somehow frozen, then there's no events occurring. Until then, we will continue to perceive time because we will continue to see events. So that's the beginning and the end of time. Okay. What about clocks? Do they measure time? On the right, you can see a pendulum clock, and below it, a atomic clock, which, by the way, you can go to the U.S. Naval Observatory in Washington and see them ticking away, I guess. But they're right on in a room with glass windows, and you can see the atomic clocks. Anyway, do they measure time? I would say don't be so sure. All clocks, no matter what type, have moving parts. Now, a friend of mine, when I told him that, he says, Bill, you're wrong. I said, what do you mean? He says, a sundial, no moving parts. I said, no, you're wrong, because a sundial isn't doing anything if it's not attached to a moving planet. Okay? That's the moving part of a sundial, is the fact that Earth's rotating. Okay? And every clock, and I mean every clock, does one thing. They generate equal events. Usually it also, they display a count of the events that it has generated with its mechanism, an analog or a digital count of some sort. Now, and you can compare that count to the other events around, and you will know if we are early or late or on time. Again, the events inside the clocks are real. Time is an illusion. So I would say clocks don't really measure time. Here's the first clocks. My guess is this is not a surprise to you. The first clocks for the solar system, planetary motion, conveniently provided by nature. Several round things spinning around other round things. Okay, this is what planetary motion is. They are very dependable within reason. We can count their events. They have always been visible to everyone. Well, not on cloudy days, I guess. I never thought about that. But anyway, you know what I mean. And every one of our units of time are derived from these planetary motions from the heavens. And all of these motions, well, as you can see on the right, the rotation of the Earth, that gives us days and hours. In the middle, the moon going around the Earth, which gives us weeks and months. And then on the bottom, the Earth going around the sun, which gives us our years, right? These are all events. These are motions, they're changes in matter. And so they're events, and they're equal events generated by these planetary motions. And this, of course, was our first perception of time. And then for reasons that I don't understand, we decided to use the Babylonian base 60 numbering system. I don't know where that came from. Well, it came from Babylonia. But anyway, I don't know why we did that, which gives us 360 degrees in a circle. And therein lies our seconds and minutes. But that's our first clocks. They come from the nature and planetary motion. So they don't measure time. They just generate events that allow us to perceive time. So speaking of atomic clocks, what is a second? Since we're on the topic, a second in an atomic clock, and you might want to write this down, 9,192,631,770 cycles of a cesium atom. I think sometimes they use a different atom, maybe rubidium, I'm not sure. We'll say cesium. And a cycle is when an electron in a cesium atom jumps from a higher energy orbit to the ground state, a lower energy orbit around the nucleus. And when it does that, it emits a single microwave photon. And it's very regular and very easy to detect and measure. And so that has been the official definition of a second since 1967 in the atomic clocks. And so that's the official definition of a second. Now over on the right, you'll see that absolutely beautiful clock, which has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm saying here. It's on a clock tower in Europe. I think Eastern Europe, I'm not sure. And it's just so beautiful. I just wanted to put it in there. I couldn't think of any place else. Look at it. It even has the signs of the zodiac. It's got so many hands on it. I can't even count them. It's got the sun. Anyway, it's a nice clock. So if all this is making sense, and if it's accurate, I'll leave that. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say this at the beginning. I'm giving this presentation. I wrote a paper back in the 80s with this and a lot more, but I can't just read the paper to you. So that's why I made this presentation. But one of the reasons I wanted to give you this presentation was to get your opinions on this. Okay. Like I said, I know how to read and I went to school, but these are just my ideas. Hey, maybe I'm not a genius and maybe I made some mistakes here, or maybe the whole thing is a mistake. But I'd love to hear your opinions, really. And don't worry about saying, hey, Bill, you're an idiot. This is all wrong. And here's why. If that's the case, I want to hear it. Okay. So, you know, I want to hear what you have to say. I really, you're a group of people whose opinion I really respect and value. Okay. Moving on. And here's another genius on the left over there, Yogi Berra. There's no stopping the future. Yeah, that is a genius. Anyway, so what's past, present, and future? Past, in my opinion, according to what I've been saying, the past is a list of events that have occurred. What is the future? It's a list of events that have not yet occurred. And what is the present? It's an arbitrary line we draw between those two lists. All right. In my opinion, those three definitions work. They function. They work. Now, when you talk about the present, frequently we just use the word now, and the word now has actually many meanings. Okay. For instance, a lion tamer may ask, "Should I let go of the rope now?" That word now has a specific meaning for him or her. Or you might say, "There's a Democrat in office now." So those are two different nows. They kind of have the same meaning, but not exactly the same. So what I'm trying to say is the present, again, is just that arbitrary line. It has different meanings between the past and the future. Okay. So another thing, when people talk about time, they often talk about mathematics. I am not a mathematician, not even close. If you knew what my algebra teacher in high school told me, oh my God, you wouldn't have respect for me anymore. But anyway, even if you don't now, but anyway. So simple math. Classical mathematical definition of time is as follows. First of all, speed equal distance divided by time, such as 10 miles per hour. Okay. Miles, of course, is movement. That's events. Therefore, time, that's the way mathematicians say it. Therefore, time is distance divided by speed, the simple math of those two equations there, which means that speed implies motion, okay? And motion is events. Therefore, the equal number of motion events that can occur at that speed, at that much distance, that's what time is. Therefore, time is an event count, according to this simple mathematics. Again, I ain't a math expert, but so if you have found something wrong, maybe this is it. But anyway, that's the simple math. Why do these things keep coming here? Okay, so holy mackerel, the hour of time, excuse me, the arrow of time is another time joke here. Knock after entering in the Futurological Society. He looks kind of perplexed by that concept. The arrow of time. People have stressed about the arrow of time for centuries. No exaggeration. The idea of the arrow of time assumes that time is an independent entity that is flowing. And the big question is, why does it seem to flow in only one direction, from the past to the future? And if you bring this up in a bar, man, I hope you're a tough guy and you can do a fight. You're good at fighting, because the fights can ensue when you start to discuss the arrow of time. I don't go to bars, but I assume that would happen. Okay, here's what I have to say about arrow of time. This one little paragraph, okay? And we can make a long discussion about it, but I want to give you this one paragraph. An observer can't confirm that an event has occurred until the light, or shall we say the electromagnetic radiation, the light from that event reaches the observer. Light only travels in one direction, away from the event and toward the observer. Once the light packets, the photons, move from the event to the observer, their speed and order cannot change. The order in which they leave the event is the same order in which they will be seen by the observer. The first photons will always be seen first, and the last photons will always be seen last. Because this order is constant and unchanging, what we perceive as the arrow of time will always be forward. It is merely an artifact of the movement of light from an event. Okay. Now, as I said, a lot more has been said about the arrow of time, but that's what I will say. Okay. Let's see here. And again, my buttons aren't working. Why is this happening? Come on. I clean over here. Oh, here we go. Now, some of you who know math a lot better than I do say, what about relativity? Well, you can just look at the equations in the bottom picture there. It really explains the whole thing. But anyway, along with that, you see the author of relativity on the right there, Albert Einstein. Special relativity, one of his relativity theories, states how time is affected as speed increases to a significant percentage of the speed of light. Actually, time is affected at all speeds, but you really can't see it or measure it until you get a significant percentage of the speed of light. However, and this is the non-mathematician speaking, in all the complex equations that I have ever seen, and my brother was much smarter and taught me how to understand them, whenever they talk about time, it is expressed in the relative operation of one clock compared to another. The clocks may be mechanical, atomic, a pulse of light, whatever. They're still clocks with moving parts. This has been successfully confirmed with experiments many times. I am not here to say relativity's got errors or Einstein was wrong or blah, 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 or anything even approaching that, okay? It has been confirmed many times. It's about as solid as you can get. However, as we have already seen, clocks are nothing more than equal event generators. So they are in fact affected by the speed, exactly the way special relativity predicts. But time itself is not. Why is time not affected? Because I would say time doesn't exist. The clocks will change. There's no two ways about it. It's been confirmed. But time itself does not. Now, as I mentioned, I started all this with thinking about time travel. And here's a time travel joke. The kids in the back of the time machine, the family time machine, and everyone will have those one of these days, right? Are we then yet? Are we then yet? Okay, instead of are we there yet? All right, fine. As I stated before, this is the idea that started me on my time quest, trying to figure out the nature of time. And there is no shortage of stories on the subject. They're all fiction. Okay, I'm thinking you know that. I've stated it anyway. However, if you want to travel in the past, all you need is a telescope. As you look further away, you look further back in time. I think the vast majority, if not all of you, understand that idea. This is simply due to the finite speed of light. However, you can see the past, but you can't interact with it. You can see a supernova from centuries ago, but you can't use this time travel to make a killing in the stock market. And this may not be what you consider a satisfying form of time travel for you. And I can understand that. Anyway, there is additional bad news about traveling into the past. The late astrophysicist Stephen Hawking said unequivocally, he was very, I'm an old guy, so I got to hear him talk when he could still talk many years ago. And he said unequivocally that we can't travel back in time, like is often done in stories, for the following reason. If you were to do so, you could possibly meet yourself, as happens in those stories a lot. There would then be two of you, where before you traveled back in time, there was only one. That means your time travel created more matter, created another you. Excuse me. And since it created another you, it created more matter. And he reminds us of the first law of thermodynamics, which would prevent that. And assuming that the thermodynamics is still valid, we can't go back in time. Now, that's what Stephen Hawking said. And like I said, he could still talk back in those days, but I wouldn't start an argument with him on it. I guarantee you that. Anyway, not me. And as we just talked about, this boy is with his dog, and the dog says, "Do you think time travel will ever be possible?" And the boy says, "It is now." And the dog says, "No, show me." He says, and the boy says, "Well, going back in time is possible, right?" And the dog says, "Show me." And he goes, "Right this way, sir, to a real honest to goodness time machine." And of course, he just shows him a telescope, lets him look through his telescope. I don't know if anyone's ever let their dog look through a telescope, but I thought the cartoon made the point. Okay. However, time travel to the future. When it comes to the future, traveling into the future, there is better news. Einstein's special theory of relativity states that if you travel fast enough, a significant percentage of the speed of light, you can travel into the future. The concept is called time dilation. The faster you move through space, the more slowly you move through time. Your clock mechanism will run slower, as we discussed earlier, and as Einstein stated also, as will the biological processes, events in your body. So you will age slower, okay, than those you left behind. You'll have effectively moved forward in time. Now, you must travel a significant percentage of the speed of light to actually do this. We currently don't have the technology to do this safely. You go 30% of the speed of light, it'll kill you. All right. We are, however, able to see this with subatomic particles in accelerators such as Fermilab in the United States. And boy, that is a wonderful place, by the way. I used to live right down the street from there. I've been there many times. I can give you a presentation on that. But anyway, Fermilab in the United States and CERN in Europe with their new big collider, about 10 years ago, they speed these particles at very close to the speed of light in their accelerators, and the particles change because of their speed. Okay, they don't deteriorate as quickly. They last longer. All right. Also, the astronauts in Earth orbit on the International Space Station do in fact age slower because of their orbital speed, 17,000 miles an hour. Not a significant part of the speed of light, but it's kind of fast, and they do age slower. But because of the general theory of relativity, Einstein's other theory, which is mostly about gravity, they age quicker due to their distance from the gravity of Earth. But that doesn't affect them as much as their speed makes them age slower. So the net of it is they age slower. A little special relativity, a little general relativity, and the net is they age slower. But of course, it's the difference is so small, I don't think it could be measured. Now, this was all confirmed in 1971. They put atomic clocks on jet planes that were flown east and west to confirm the theory. And those atomic clocks on the planes were compared to identical clocks at the U.S. Naval Observatory. And the flying clocks lost 59 nanoseconds, give or take, when they're going east, and gained 273 going west. Not, you're not going to be late for work with that, but and they did it several other times too, in a similar way, and they got the similar results. So it really works. You just have to go really, really fast. And I know you go fast on I-10. Excuse me. Do you have I-10 over there in Austin? That's the big highway over here by Houston. You go fast on. Oh wait, you got one that's 80 miles an hour, right? The speed limit's 80 miles an hour near Austin. But that's still not fast enough. Okay. Anyway, so you can travel into the future. Now, I told you in the beginning that these are mostly my ideas. I think you can see where it is, my ideas. And some people agree with me. In my research on this topic, and this came long after I came to the conclusion that time doesn't exist, I came across a very satisfying corroborating opinion in the book The Meaning of Relativity by Albert Einstein, published in 1922. On page 30, he says, God bless him, upon giving up the hypothesis of the absolute character of time, it is neither the point in space nor the instant in time at which something happens that has physical reality. The instant of time doesn't have physical reality, but only the event itself. I was very happy to see that Einstein agreed that time is event dependent, even though I apparently hadn't thought of it first. I like to think of he and I were collaborating on this project together, right? He just did his part 75 years before me. Okay. And there's the book on the bottom of the screen there. That's the book I'm talking about. So you can check me out. Okay. And on the right, you can see when I was talking with Albert Einstein and I was pointing out his errors. No, it's not. This is the what is it called? The Wax Museum in London. What's the name of the famous? There's a famous wax museum. I forget the name of it now. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tussauds Wax Museum, and I couldn't not take the opportunity to pose with him to show him what he was doing wrong. Anyway, but the point is, he seemed, in my opinion, to strongly suggest that time has no physical reality, but events do. And I said, yikes, that sounds familiar to me.
Can you still get shirts like that, Bill?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
Can you still get shirts like that?
Oh my God, you noticed my shirt? I loved that shirt back then. I don't have it anymore. I loved it. And, things don't last forever. And no, I don't think so. They don't think they make them as like they used to, as the saying goes. When was that? Oh, it says there 1992 was when I was in London. Anyway, so there we are working hard together. All right. Anyway, all right. Which looks more realistic, me or Einstein? No, don't answer that. Never mind. So
who's that guy on the right?
Who's that guy on the right? Yes. Oh, wait a minute. This is 1992. You probably don't even recognize that as being me. I've changed. I'm 74 now. Anyway, that's me. Who's that guy on the right? Smart Alec. So Einstein also said the following. He said this in a letter to someone: past, present, and future are only illusions, even if they're stubborn ones. Present has no meaning in relativity. And I thought that was pretty close to the mark also from what I was trying to figure out. Now, so, me and Einstein worked together, as you can see, but in my research, I ended up reading and even speaking to this group of scientists. Here's 6 scientists. This is not all the ones I read, that's for sure. And they got very close. They were almost about to saying the same thing that I was saying, but they just hesitated at the very end and didn't jump off the cliff. Okay. But if you wanted to look up any of these, you might get their opinions. They had good opinions. They got close to what I'm saying. And I even spoke with the Julian Barber in England. And I don't think he agreed with me much, but anyway, okay. So, what was I trying to say? Time is an illusion. There's nothing flowing. Our familiar perception of time is caused only by our observation of physical events. Okay. At first, it may be difficult to get used to the idea. I assure you, from my own experience, it was difficult to get used to the idea. So since we are so familiar with the idea of time. However, if you think about it for a while and look carefully at all the various aspects of time you encounter, I think you will see there is always a connection with events. Okay. I suggest you give it some time to sink in. That is what I wanted to tell you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I ask you to please wake up the person next to you now. And of course, I'm open for questions. I have to be in bed by midnight, but other than that, I got. I'm hearing all kind of strange noise.
Okay, everybody, we had somebody making noise, so I muted everybody. And if you want to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Where's my mute button?
Yeah. My mute button.
Hey, Peter Campbell, it appears you've got a noise generator. All right, Peter's going to figure out what's going on. Somebody else?
Okay, I just unmuted myself and the noise isn't happening. So I think it's not me. It's, I'm
Yeah.
going to stay unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Looks like when Peter Campbell unmutes, we get the noise. It
Not sure what
seems.
it is, Peter, but it's coming from you. So.
Tell him to put something in the chat.
Yeah, Peter, can you put your question in the chat?
Can't hear you at all, Peter. We just was.
Yeah. Down your more button. There's an option for chat. Go to that question. Okay.
Okay, I just saw he said hi on the chat, so he can get at the chat and he's muted so we don't get the noise, I guess.
Okay, just go ahead and put your question in. Somebody else with a question for Bill.
okay, so Bill, my question is, on the two examples of the cesium clocks going in opposite directions on the jets, explain that a little bit more, because I can't quite make the connection about why the time in the atomic clock changed. What's the event that's happening there?
Well, I think there's two things involved there. One is the speed of the jets. They're moving at, I don't know how fast they were moving at, 600, 700, 800 miles an hour. I really don't know. I didn't get that information. And then these are jets flying around the planet Earth, which is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. So I can only guess that the speed of the jets, and which is, the fastest thing they could muster at the time, and the rotation of the Earth is the quote speed unquote that's causing the time change.
But then that would mean that basically the atomic activity that's happening in that cesium atom has to change in order to get a delay in the time.
Yes, and Albert Einstein states that in special relativity, your clocks will be affected.
Okay, got it, thank you.
That also connects to the observations in particle accelerators, doesn't it? That the atoms themselves are changing slightly?
Absolutely. When I say they change, I forgot what the word is. Some of them deteriorate, decay at a certain rate. Each particle is different. And if you move them these things move at like 90% of the speed of light, I think. And so they get significant changes in their decay rate.
Okay.
And that would align with the moving atomic clocks, yes?
Right, that makes sense. When you said they compared it to a stationary one on Earth, right? So one goes west, it's going slower than the rotation of the Earth. One goes east, it's going faster than the rotation of the Earth. And the
Exactly.
one is the comparator between the two. Right.
Yeah. Now, the article I read didn't say that, but I made that assumption. It sounded like it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I know they did it there was an astronaut that had a twin brother, and like they sent him up on the ISS for like a year, and then they compared, they did a bunch of testing on him and showed, like his, the biological markers showed that he aged slower on the space station.
Wait a minute. Are you saying Einstein was right? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Well, you might be right there.
Hey, Bill, this is Ernie. It seems to me that we measure time because we die. If we didn't die, I don't know if we would measure time.
Well, I hear what you're saying. The whole birth, life, and death thing is something we pay attention to, right? And I don't even know what else to say except that I tend to agree with what you're saying there. That is an aspect of time that is in our forefront. We really pay attention to that, and in that way, we can't forget time. What we perceive as time, it's always in front of us.
I think
for that reason.
from birth to see time in that way, and maybe if we weren't, things would be different.
I think if you didn't die, you'd still want to know when happy hour is. So
Okay, okay. Talk about an important event. You want to know when that's occurring, yeah.
Okay, let's try and get Patrick's question in here. So I'm just gonna read it out. He's got 3 paragraphs here. The example was driving on a road north and then turning on a road going northeast. The analogy was north is the space dimension and east is the time dimension. This was to explain time dilation. If you go directly north, you make no progress to the east, but if you go northeast, then you make less progress to the north. This implies to me that we are SORTA,
Sort of.
sort of forces to go somewhere in space-time. It's always the same speed.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah,
That sounds like he's saying that basically everything, all of us are all moving at the speed of light. It's just that we are moving through time and less through space, and light is moving through space and it doesn't experience the passage of time. So on a coordinate system, we'd be pointing in different directions.
He gave a thumbs up on that, yeah.
I heard the part where someone just said that light always moves. Well, no, wait, that light. Okay. And the last thing says there is any comment on that. And I have to say, no, I must admit, I don't quite understand that. I would have to think about that. Thought I would think that no matter what direction you're moving in, you're still moving through space. Okay. And from what I think and what I know, what I think I know, that your movement through space, except for relativity, doesn't affect your movement through time.
Jamie, you want to take another crack at that?
Here, I can bring the speaker over there so you can hear it.
I've heard that analogy as well before, and it involves thinking of time as a fourth dimension on a coordinate system. And what that analogy is doing is reducing that down to a 2-dimensional plane.
It's called
Yeah,
a
and
phase
space
space.
goes in one direction and then time in the
And
other.
time goes in the other direction. That also, I've also heard that analogy similar to limiting the speed of light and why you can't move, why you have a limit there, because you can only move a certain amount in one way or the other way. You can't, adjusting your motion in one dimension forces you to adjust your motion in the other dimension.
It's called a phase space.
And I think it's a kick just because it implies that we're all moving at the speed of light, just different components of it.
Fascinating.
Oh, I never knew I was moving at the speed of light. I'll tell you, like I said, I'm 24 years old.
There's a little vector math in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a question directed to me. I must admit, I can't give a cogent answer to that question. That's something that is perhaps I could say is out of the subject of this presentation, and it's also something that I just don't know that much about, I guess.
So I get your analogy about the arrow of time and the observability of events. But if there isn't really an arrow of time, or rather a physical manifestation of it, what keeps the events happening in the right order?
Well, I said it at one point very early in the presentation, events don't need time. Okay.
Right.
They occur, and all the events, the flap of a butterfly wing and the orbit of the moon around the earth, all have different reasons that make them happen. Okay. Neither of them need time. There's all kinds of physics. I mean, there's lots of physics besides time. Okay. And there's lots of physics that are causing those events to occur. And they have occurred, they do occur, they will continue to occur. And as I stated, because we see them, then we perceive time. But
So
they don't need time.
So you think it's just simple dependency order?
I'm sorry, say again?
So you think it would be simple dependency order? Events depend on a certain order.
It's cause and effect. One leading to.
Cause and effect are certainly involved in the events, that's for sure. And the order of events has nothing to do with time. The physical properties of the universe cause events to occur. I mean, for instance, on the atomic clock there, those electrons change orbits on the cesium atom, and that's just physical properties of our universe that we happen to live in that causes that kind of thing to happen. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to answer your question there, but that's the closest I can get to an answer, I think.
So, Bill, it seems like your talk needs a parallel talk now on perception and perceiving and the perceivers.
Well, our perceptions have to do with that happy hour that you talked about. I think our perceptions can be altered.
All right, well, let's go back to tree falls in the wood.
Oh, listen, don't get me started. I got kicked out of my philosophy class. I literally got kicked out. He says, I think you should leave. When we started to discuss that, and I told him I thought he was wrong, and that was the end of my philosophy class. I don't want to get kicked off of Zoom. That would be the ultimate put down.
What was he wrong about? What was your take on it?
Well, the story is, if it falls in the forest, if there's no one there, is there a sound? Okay. And I said, yeah, there is, because sound is vibrations and no one has to be there for their ears to detect those vibrations. Case closed. How shall I put it? He didn't agree with me. So not the first time. Listen, I've been kicked out of much better places than that. Okay. So that was no big deal.
Will we have any more questions?
Your empty space there, example early on where there are no events occurring because there's nothing in there.
Yes.
Kind of hard to have a cavity like that because photons are going to be traveling. Maybe it's wrapped up in something.
You're right. I understand what you're saying. The example has limited value.
Okay.
You have to imagine a space with no matter in it. Okay. That doesn't mean that we can find one.
But to even, I don't know, you would, it seems like you have to have somebody watching that space.
Exactly. You are correct, sir. Again, it has limited value. If you just imagine that I was trying to say, if you got no stuff there can't be any events, therefore there's no time. And that doesn't mean we're going to find a place like that.
Bill,
Terry, you're saying if there's no one there to observe it?
Yeah, that's the tree falling thing again. Somebody in the back had a question. Can you ask it
I have a
louder?
question. Bill, have you ever heard of quantum foam?
I'm sorry, have I ever heard of what?
Quantum foam.
Quantum foam?
Uh-huh.
Foam or foam?
You know what? I think, let me tell you something. I think I heard of that concept recently. And when I read about it, I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now.
Okay.
Unless it's where the particles spontaneously appear in empty space. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, it's a little deeper than that, but yeah, virtual part.
Yeah.
I want to look up Planck space.
Planck space?
Yeah.
Blank time?
Well,
Listen,
basically-
I've learned a lot since I was a kid. My brother was smart, taught me a lot. And quantum physics, I will probably die not understanding all of that. Okay. It's a bit beyond me.
Nobody understands it.
Oh, okay. You made me feel better. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, sir, I have to say thank you for putting this presentation together.
Yes.
Because as you were giving it and going through each section of the explanation and the perceptions and how you went about researching it, I was thinking of questions and you answered every blasted one of them before you get to the end. So that didn't leave me with any questions. So the only thing that I can tell you that I had heard previous about time that matters is that people assume time is a strict progression from cause to effect. But actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. So saith the doctor.
Yeah. It's like that guy said, it's just one damn thing after another.
Bill, you have a question. If you got the chat there from Samuel Kim.
Okay, from Samuel Kim, yes. Okay, I'll read it. How would perception of time be affected in a state of the universe in which there is no available events for us to base our experience off, of even if there are events happening. For example, say an observer is in a seemingly empty space, but there are photons of a wavelength we cannot see. Technically, events are still happening. So how would this work for, oh, well, okay. In other words, there's events, but we don't perceive them. Then I think that we would say, well, sorry, there's no time. There's no events, there's no time. Now, since time isn't something that flows, it really doesn't matter whether we can see them or not. That's my answer to the question. Okay. Either there are events or there aren't. If there are events and we don't perceive them, like the gravity waves, let's say, we didn't perceive them for centuries. They're still happening, but they would not affect our perception of time because we're not seeing them. Okay. Now, if that's the only events that are there, and I think that's what was stated, if those are the only events, then now again, it's a crazy example because if we're there, our bodies are generating events. Fine, but let's just put that aside. But if we're not perceiving the events, then for our practical purposes, we would say there's no time.
Hey, Bill, this guy with a name tag beside me, name is Time, I guess. He tapped me on the shoulder, said, ask Bill, maybe it's the events that are illusions.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Here's what you do. You drive down the street, okay, and when you get to a curve, don't turn your steering wheel and see if any events occur. I can't prove it, but give that a shot and you'll get a better idea of events.
He just ran out the door.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, somebody just said play Time by the Chambers Brothers. Dynamite piece of soul music. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay, to that I say Pink Floyd, Time.
Also, the bass line is dynamite. A great song. Absolutely.
Are there any other comments up there?
If I could save time in a bottle. Here we go.
Haven't analyzed that one. Great song, though.
Yep.
Ooh, now we're going back. That's maybe 1966 or something like that?
72.
I thought Dr. Hawking had indicated we can't go back.
That's true. Oh, that's true. And I can't argue with him.
Are there any other questions in the chat, Terry?
That last one was play time.
No, I mean above.
Above, perception of being in the state of union. That was space time. Peter Campbell had another one. No, that was his answer to the last one. I think that's all the questions.
Okay. Well, like I said, I got to be in bed by midnight, but I got plenty of time. Ooh, did you hear what I just said? I got plenty of time.
There, yeah.
Let me tell you something. Once you start saying time doesn't exist, you'll find yourself using the word time every few minutes. Okay. It drives me nuts.
Where there's a sense in that if we're thinking about it, it kind of exists.
But okay. Well, listen, I'm
It's
telling
still
you.
a pattern in my brain or your brain, but it's still, yeah. Something's going on there. It's events still.
Yes.
But if you regress, what's a social construct? What underlies that?
Say that a little louder.
I just said time is a social construct.
Time is a social construct. Okay.
Yeah. Based on our perception. Based on our perception of events. Absolutely. I would agree with that completely.
Well, let me give you a little bit of AAS history, because it kind of brings it to mind, and you've challenged us to think about something we probably haven't thought about in this way. You've obviously thought a lot about it, but the fact that it's challenging. In the early days of the Austin Astronomical Society, we had a member by the name of Bill Carnahan. And Bill Carnahan, his big deal was pushing gravity. Gravity wasn't attraction, it was pushing. and he would get out his beach ball and reverse his vacuum cleaner or his, so that it was blowing air and he could support the ball in the middle of the air. We all kind of chuckled, but it was another thing that he made us think. I think you've got a lot more validity to your thoughts than he did, but nevertheless, I appreciate you making us think.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your comments, but I can tell you one thing, that concept of gravity pushing instead of pulling, or however you want to state it, I've heard it repeated just a few days ago. Someone else, a paper, and I don't know, was saying a very similar topic. We'll have to see where that goes.
Wow, okay.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's it. And if there's no more questions, we can wrap it up. But thanks so much, Bill. Just to keep along on the theme, you did not take too much time. That was perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege to talk to you guys. I wish I could be there, but we'll always have a good time on Zoom.
Well, let us know next time you're in town, you want a burger and a beer and a talk.
Oh, God bless you. My pleasure. I'd like to do that. Hopefully I will do that.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Bill.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're signing off.
Signing off.